Yeah. I'm the deputy chef. He's from a deputy chef.
All right. I'll stick with you.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District monthly board meeting for June 9, 2014 to order. Please stand for a moment of silence for 4 firefighters that lost their lives this month and for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No, he's not here today.
Nice to see everybody this evening. Nice turnout. Need a motion for the approval of the regular board minutes from May 12, 2014.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Need one motion for the financials for the May 2014 and current expenditures, the acknowledgement of May 2013 financial report. Acknowledge, that should be, yeah, okay, acknowledgement of wire transfers and transfers between accounts. Need a motion for that, please?
I move that we accept the administrative.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded that motion, please? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is always one of our favorites, the presentation of Phoenix Awards, for which we have 3 this evening, which is really incredible. Chief Daigle.
Deputy Chief
I'm
DeWitt.
sorry,
isn't it?
Deputy Chief DeWitt.
Good evening. Make sure everybody finds a seat. For those of you that haven't been here before to witness a Phoenix Award, just a little brief, excuse me, a little brief history on it. The Phoenix Award is the most meaningful and prestigious award presented by the Bonita Springs Fire District. In order to recognize the dedication and skill of emergency responders, this award was initiated after the district began providing advanced life support services in March of 1999. The phoenix is recognized as a symbol of excellence, as a mythical bird said to rise again from the ashes. This award is presented to those who exhibit expertise on emergency medical or fire scene to restore the life of a victim. As the chairman said, we have 3 tonight, and I'm going to go briefly through each one of the calls, have the responders come up here, and the patients if they are present. The first one we have goes to firefighters on Rescue 21, who responded to the aid of a 52-year-old woman who collapsed in her kitchen. The patient's family had stated that the patient was cooking when they heard a loud crash. When the family members came to see what had fallen, they found the patient unresponsive on the kitchen floor. Firefighters arrived to find the compressions being administered by a family member. CPR was taken over, and initial rhythm on the heart monitor showed the patient was in ventricular fibrillation. CPR was continued for 2 minutes. The patient was administered a total of 3 defibrillator shocks to the heart, and several other medications were administered. The patient's heart was converted from VFib to a normal sinus rhythm. The patient had a pulse while en route to the hospital and was trying to breathe on her own. The Bonita Springs Fire District has extended a heartfelt invitation for this award presentation to the patient and their family, hoping to reunite the firefighters and the patient again. The crew, I'd like the crew to come up here at this time. Lieutenant Cesar Sanchez and firefighter Michael Mendez. What we're going to do, like I said, since we have 3 of them, and a couple of the gentlemen are on numerous calls, so I'm going to call all the firefighters up, and if the patients are here, have them come up also. The second one goes out to Rescue 21 and Engine 21, who responded to the aid of a woman who had been released from the hospital days prior for, I'm going to butcher this, so it's galtaric acidemia. It's a disorder in which the body is unable to process certain proteins properly. The patient's boyfriend stated that she had not felt well in the morning and had come back to check on her. She was in her bathroom extremely ill. When the firefighters arrived, she was semi-conscious with a regular pulse. The patient was pale, warm, and struggled to speak. After taking the patient's vitals, she was loaded into the ambulance for transport, complaining of abdominal pain. Lee County EMS was asked if they needed a Bonita Springs firefighter to ride with them into the hospital, and they declared it not to be necessary. Firefighters left for the fire station. While pulling back into the station, Lee County EMS ambulance drove past them with lights and sirens blaring, indicating that the patient was now in distress. The ambulance now needed a BSFD paramedic to ride along with them, so Battalion Chief Bradley Brown drove firefighter Tom Harrison to the scene to assist. The patient had in fact gone into cardiac arrest. She was pulseless, and the patient was treated with proper cardiac arrest protocol. Minutes later, Engine 21 was also toned out. As they arrived, they had found that the Lee County ambulance was stuck in the gravel near the intersection of Dean Street and Old 41. Another Lee County ambulance arrived shortly on the scene, never interrupting CPR or patient care. Firefighter Adam Hughes and firefighter Philip Kinsey III continued CPR even while the patient was being transferred from ambulance to ambulance. The patient would become conscious while CPR was being performed, and when CPR was stopped, she would go back into her cardiac arrest. CPR would then be started again, and she would become conscious, only to go right back into cardiac arrest. They continued this way all the way to the hospital. Again, the Bonita Springs Fire Department extended a heartfelt invitation to present this presentation to the family and hope to reunite the firefighters and the patient. At this time, I'd like to call the crew up from those engines. Lieutenant David Brewer, firefighter paramedic Adam Hughes, firefighter paramedic Tom Harrison, firefighter EMT Philip Kinsey III, Lieutenant Cesar Sanchez, and firefighter paramedic Mike Mendez. This last one's a kind of unique one. This is a first for the Bonita Springs Fire Department that I know of. This last one, let me read it as it goes. Firefighters on Truck 25 who responded to the aid of a 70-year-old man who suffered a cardiac arrest in his home. Lieutenant Andrew Smith and his crew arrived on scene to find a patient lying supine on the couch. He was not breathing and did not have a pulse. Firefighters quickly moved him to the floor to begin CPR. Patient had cyanosis, blue-purple discoloration of the skin was forming around the patient's head and neck due to a lack of oxygen. The patient's rhythm was VFib again, and the defibrillator gave the heart multiple shocks throughout the care. The patient was paired with administering several other medications, which ultimately regained the patient's circulation before transporting him to the hospital. His wife stated that her husband was complaining of a headache prior to the incident and that he had suffered a massive heart attack nearly 2 years earlier, a call that Lieutenant Andrew Schmidt vividly remembered, as he was the lieutenant who responded to this emergency as well. This is the second time Andy Schmidt has given this person back their life. So at this time, I'd like to call up those people. It would be Lieutenant Andrew Schmidt, firefighter paramedic Michael Koshlap, firefighter paramedic Fred O'Donnell, and firefighter EMT Bruce Sheffield. At this time, I would like to congratulate these firefighters who dedicate themselves to saving lives. When you're able to restore and truly save a life, you have given a family something they would not have had without you: their wife, their husband, their father, their mother. You guys all do make a difference, and we're proud of you and thank you.
Good job, Greg.
I'd like to say thanks, gentlemen. Truly some amazing stories. Many times in the fire district, we achieve some sort of notoriety for certain things, and most of the time, these men and women of the fire service do not want the notoriety that they get. They basically come up here and get acknowledged because we make them. It's interesting because many times also I'll receive phone calls, and more often than not, they're very, very, very moving phone calls. Also, I'd like to thank the board for maintaining the tools to combat the mediocrity and to sustain our culture of excellence in this fire district. I greatly appreciate it. I received a phone call. This is in line with the Phoenix Awards. I received a phone call, and I don't know any better way to put how this phone call went when this lady sent me a follow-up letter. And it says, "Dear Chief Daigle, how can I possibly say thank you for saving my life? There are absolutely no words to express my gratitude to you all. As we've done in the past, my husband and I came to the Bonita Springs, Naples area for a relaxing Memorial Day weekend. Staying at the nearby Hilton Homewood Suites in Bonita Springs. Very early Sunday morning on May 25th, I stopped breathing, and a hotel personnel assisted my extremely distraught husband in contacting emergency assistance. While I never saw them, it's my understanding that 4 amazing expert firefighter paramedics were dispatched to my aid. From the very first moment of their quick response and arrival at the hotel, they went into high gear and did their jobs so perfectly and ultimately saved my life. Their education in emergency medical care, as well as their professionalism, has brought me to where I am today, just a week later, alive and doing well. I've been told what happened that morning, and I'm aware of all these men did for me, all while offering comfort and reassurance to my husband. My heart stops just thinking about it, and I am so overwhelmed with gratitude and love, and how proud you must be of these wonderful individuals. These most amazing men were angels on my shoulder, and that day, and thoughts of them will remain in my heart forever. They are Winthrop Telford, Shane Frost, Austin Bodette, and Mike Bookhart Jr. My family and I can't thank you enough except to say thank you, thank you, thank you for all you give me, back my life. My gift to you all, my everlasting love, and my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation. You were all there when I needed you most. My thoughts and prayers are with you all today and every day. Very truly yours, Joan Grench." That's why we're in this business. Thank you.
The call that I took on the phone a couple of weeks ago wasn't a Phoenix Award, but the lady was so certain that it could have been if we had not responded to her in time. She called, and as I answered the phone, she was in tears, and she explained the situation. She said it was also Memorial Day, and she had been released from the hospital that morning, diagnosed with a migraine. It was recommended that she use oxygen, but when she could not get her oxygen to work, she called Walgreens Pharmacy. The person answering the phone at Walgreens heard the distress in her voice and called 911. Our unit responded. Tom Harrison and David Brewer assisted her with the oxygen. When she refused to go to the hospital, they remained with her to help her stabilize. The patient's breathing rate seemed to increase, and we requested an ambulance. She was transferred to North Collier and diagnosed with a heart attack. The patient was totally convinced that without David Brewer and Tom Harrison, she would have died. Her son married 2 weeks following this incident, and she was very adamant that without our assistance, she would not have attended his wedding.
Just wanted to highlight some of those special calls that we receive and letters that we receive that don't always reach out and touch the public as they do many of our employees here, myself included. And thank you for letting us share some of the stories that we've seen this month.
Thank you, one and all. Kind of hard to get going with business here again after this. Next item on the agenda is old business. Anybody have any old business? Hearing none, we'll move on to the new business. We have an audit presentation and for fiscal year ending 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couldn't say, kind of tough to follow that, so I do appreciate everything you all do. For the record, my name's Jeff Brown. I'm with Ashley Brown and Company CPAs, here to present your audit as of September 30th, 2013. I've got a couple things I'll bring to your attention, but please feel free to interrupt me as we go along if you've got any questions. We will be issuing what's referred to as an unmodified or an unqualified opinion again this year, which means that your financial statements were properly presented in accordance with governmental accounting standards as they were presented to us to be audited. The first thing I'll show you is on page 12. This is your balance sheet. The total assets for I'll just primarily be referring to the general fund and not the impact fee fund. But the total assets ended up at $7.2 million. Total liabilities, $937,000. So that left you with a total fund balance or a reserve of $6.282 million. You'll notice the third line up from the bottom is a negative $808,000. And the reason that's negative, that unassigned, what's happening is above there you'll see $3.8 million, $200,000, $480,000. I'll show you in the back where these numbers are kind of coming from. But those are the reserve policies that have been established over the years. And what's happened is at the end of, if you were to look at a snapshot as of 9/30/13, there wasn't enough cash to fund all those things. So there's a notation in the back as to how that's going to be addressed going forward. But that's why you see that negative $800,000 number there. If you turn back to page 14, this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balances. Total revenues for the year, just about $16.5 million. Total expenditures, $18.4 million. So that net deficit was just under $2 million, was partially offset by $365,000 that was transferred from the impact fee fund. So your reserves or fund balance was reduced by $1.5 million. So fortunately, you started the year at 7.8, but that's how you're ending it at the 6.2 million number there. Page 22 actually starts the notes to the financial statements, defines the district, the significant accounting policies, and provide some supporting schedules for the land, the building, equipment, long-term debt, et cetera. But if you flip all the way back to page 60, there's a little bit more explanation of that negative, 60, yeah, the negative 800,000 that I was referring to. There's an asterisk there. It says the assignments, and it sort of indicates what the operating, the emergency disaster, the repair and replacement, what those policies that were set, and that number totals the $7 million number. So that's what I was indicating, is that that's the 7, but you only had 6.2, so that's why you have the negative 8. Page 64 is the budget versus actual schedule. About halfway down the page, total budgeted revenues is 17.8 million. You actually collected 16.5, so that's a negative 1.3 variance. But on the expenditure side, due to the reserves, you had budgeted 26 million, you only spent 18, so you were positive 8 million there. So under budget, which is obviously a good thing, but there's more detail. The page 60, 65, and 66 is a more detailed analysis of that budget versus actual schedule. I won't go through the whole thing, but that sort of supports the main budget schedule. So with that said, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions?
The other thing, once this draft gets approved, we will be submitting all the final reports to the state, the Auditor General, Department of Financial Services, filing the annual financial report, and everything that you're required to file. So you'll be in compliance for September 30, 2013. We'll be doing that by the end of this month. Yes, sir.
I was interested to know, did you see any trends in, when you went through this, like if these trends continue that we're going to be in difficulty or anything like that?
Yes, that's one of two things. Either you'd have to address the reserve type of policies or decrease expenses, raise revenue. Because yeah, I mean, you were on the general fund side, 2 million more was spent than was collected. Fortunately, you did have the reserves to offset that, but it won't. I mean, you're not, as far as the state of Florida is concerned, not in a negative financial position, if you will, because you do have some reserves, but if that negative trend continues, it obviously can't continue forever.
What's the biggest area that the cost is going up?
I don't know that we saw the cost side of it so much. It seemed to be more even on the budget versus on the budgeted revenues were less than what you collected, less than what you had budgeted.
Could you tell me why or what area of the department's operations is responsible for this shortfall, or this overspending, over revenue?
I'd say it's hold on.
Is it, overtime, personal services?
No, it's not. It's not in there. It would have been better if there's 17.8 million was a budgeted cash inflow, and 16.5 came in. So that's the 1.3 difference.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the about halfway down the page, the personal services, which is all your 64, is all your salaries, pension contributions, insurance. That was within $40,000 of budget. So I mean, you're real close on that one.
So this shortfall in the revenue was primarily from the ad valorem? Was that far off?
Yeah, and interest, there's just kind of a whole, I don't have the detail of what makes up all the revenue lines.
So when I look back, it was from the ad valorem.
Yes.
Lion's share of it.
Part of the processes that we went through in order to address these issues, we knew we would have a shortfall. In particular, that's why we raised the millage rate. However, what is happening is with our current reserve policy, what we have in policy now exceeds what we have been able to put into the reserve policy. Now that we're going to hopefully address that with this coming budget.
Yeah, but we didn't I can't believe that the information we got from the county on what we could expect to get from ad valorem would be that far off.
You have to remember, this is 2013, not the current budget year. This was from September. So when we budgeted, we figured that we would still be in a shortfall, which is the reason why the board moved the ad valorem to the point that it
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
Well, not to get into the details of the budget, but with this particular budget year, with some changes that we can make and with some additional revenues, just because of, taxable, ad valorem should be substantially higher this year. And I think addressing, the expenditure side of the budget, we've cut to the point where there's not much left. But, short of a tax increase, which nobody here, I'm sure, wants to even talk about, I think that we can look forward to, with the higher revenues this year and making some changes to our reserve policy. I think that the bleeding is going to stop from my analysis of this. My looking at this situation, it seems that the bleeding is going to stop.
One other thing that it's a little bit misleading that I wanted to bring to your attention, there's also budgeted in here about $1 million for loan proceeds, which had to do with the ALS. So since that didn't happen, that is skewing the numbers a little bit because it was, you gotta remember, the budget was done way back in September of 12. So we're significantly further back in time when that was initially established. So since that didn't happen, you see a negative $1 million on that page 64. So that's a big chunk of what we're talking about. So this is merely a governmental accounting standard that says what was the budget, what was actually spent. So it's not always indicative of the results of the operation because you're presenting things that happened 13 months ago at least.
So I believe the ad valorem taxes showed that we were short about 86,000.
Yes, sir.
Was expected.
Well,
Any more questions?
I just want to say that this department, as far as I'm concerned, runs an austere operation. The expenditure of this department, $18 million, is a fair number for the services provided. It's a very fortunate thing that we raised the mill rate last year. We didn't want to do that, but the projections of the budget told us exactly what was going to happen here. And instead of having a shortfall of $1 million or $2 million, we might have had a shortfall of $6 million. We might not have any reserves at all.
Right.
So I think the department, the administration of the department should be applauded for, it seems terrible to say that, but they were applauded for budgeting properly. We have, the results came out very much like we expected them to come out, Matter of fact, I thought we could have budgeted a lesser mill rate last year, but these things have shown me that's not true. So I think your report reflects the efficiencies of this department.
Absolutely. Yeah, with that said, we do appreciate the assistance from your staff. The audit process is very disruptive and we request numerous documents and take a lot of their time, so we appreciate their efforts.
Yeah. Do we need a motion to accept this report, or is this
You
just?
just have a consensus, right?
You just have to accept the report.
Accept the report.
There's-
Everybody okay with accepting it?
Yes.
Commissioners? should we all-
I make a
Okay.
motion that we accept the report, or?
I'm not sure we need a motion for it
Okay.
at this point, because it's
Just
a
a
draft, but
consensus.
just a consensus. So
Okay.
yes, we're fine with that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No. The next item on the agenda is a discussion and an authorization to enter into a land contract in the Strike Lane area for future growth. At this time, I have no cards for anybody wishing to address this publicly, but if anybody would like to right